Local fishing guide Gary Wright drops Rob Bredl on the island. Gary has roamed the area for years and has no shortage of reports about big crocs. This large concentration of nesting flatback turtles could be the reason.
These tracks here are from a crocodile about the size I reckon Solomon was when he got to this island. Somewhere between 1.5 and 2 metres. Now I reckon this little fellow went up there last night, had a feed of baby turtles on high tide. We've probably got the start of another Solomon here.
While most of the egg laying and hatching occurs in darkness, there's always some activity early morning or late afternoon. As he watches one of the early morning stragglers, Rob Bredl begins to understand just how many turtles must lay on this small stretch of beach.
Those are not her eggs she's digging up. She's just digging her own egg chamber, and she'll be laying in a minute. Now, there are so many turtles coming up onto these beaches to lay their eggs, this often happens. This is in fact the largest flatback turtle rookery in the world. Like all egg-laying reptiles, this turtle has gone into a state of torpor. At this point, she's at her most vulnerable. This is to ensure that the eggs go down properly, so the next generation has the best chance of survival.
Further along the beach, Rob notices one unusual track in a sea of turtle tracks.
From the size of the footprints and the width of this track here, this was a 2.5 metre crocodile. There's no prizes for guessing where he's been. Now the tracks in the sand here show me that the croc walked up, caught a little turtle coming down here, then he walked back up into there and sat where they were coming out of the ground, and they had a bit of a smorgasbord.
And early this morning, they're still coming out of the ground. The first swim of their tiny life is through solid sand up to a metre deep. Almost paradoxically, on this island, daytime hatchlings have a better chance of survival. The nocturnal hordes of night herons have retreated to the dense mangrove forests, and the crocodiles to the sea.
This beach and these little fellows have answered one of the questions I've always had. If Solomon was one of the crocodiles we let go from Edward River, it had always puzzled me how he got so big so quick. Now on this beach, every day, hundreds of these little fellows hatch and make their way to the water. And I'm pretty certain that Solomon would have grown up here. I think I'll give these fellows a head start.
Solomon's good life ended when he left the island to set up a breeding territory. By chance, he chose a place near people, and that's a big mistake for a big crocodile to make. At Edward River Crocodile Farm, Rob Bredl looks up his old mate Him. Him is the largest crocodile he ever caught, and at 5.3 metres is one of the largest in captivity.
Good boy. Good boy. Hang on. If Solomon had stayed on Crab Island, chasing fish and turtles, he'd have been okay. But he decided to go to the mainland, set up a territory in a creek near where people live, chased all the other big males out, only kept his females, and everything else there, including people and dogs, were just food. He then became a rogue. And it was inevitable that he was going to end up either dead in a farm like this or in a zoo like mine. So your dad told you about some stories when we were catching crocodiles, did he?
Yeah.
Here at the mouth of the Chapman River, a couple of crocodiles have been causing a bit of a problem. They're not real big. A couple of dogs have gone missing, and one of them's actually came up and taken fish off the line. It's about 2.5 metres long, not big, but he could become a rogue. So we're going to teach him a lesson. We're going to catch him. And the best way to do this is with a harpoon, Gavin. We stick this little thing on the end of a spear. We punch it in through him, just goes through his skin and just hangs on.
Won't come off.
Won't come off, mate. Just pokes into the spear right there.
Yeah.
And once we got him on a line. Then we just play him like we play a fish.
Peter Mowat, the farm manager, works with Gavin Kendall. Gavin is the grandson of one of the original crew of crocodile catchers for the Edward River Crocodile Farm. He's 21, a first-time crocodile catcher, and wants to learn Rob Bredl's harpooning techniques.
Just like me and your dad used to do, mate. You pull that off that stick. Oh, yeah. Just like you and me dad used to do. The first one, is it? Yep. Well, I think we've got him.
They'll just catch this one and let it go.
Yeah.
After an experience like this, no one will see the young croc for years to come.
So careful of these, yes?
From now on, there's not an ounce of rogue left in him.
There we go. One little fella.
When they caught Solomon, he was a lot bigger, more than 4 metres, and a lot more dangerous. He was a potential man-eater and had to be removed. Protected by law, he couldn't be shot. The wildlife authorities sent Solomon to Rob Bredl Zoo, a type of crocodile heaven. You might be forgiven for thinking this old rogue is tame, docile as a pussycat, but this is a mistake.
If you are ever unlucky enough to be grabbed by a big crocodile like Solomon, it should be it, dead and eaten. There are really no second chances with an animal that size. Now, when he grabbed my niece Karla, it should have been it, and it very nearly was.
Rob Bredl explains why his crocodiles are so dangerous, although they're well fed and live in crocodile heaven, and why Solomon attacked his niece Karla.
I'll bet you thought he was trying to eat me. He wasn't. But if it had got me, he'd have carved me up all right. Eating me would have been an afterthought. All he was doing was trying to chase me out of his territory. Now,
at the time I turned him around and I walked back, it was raining, it was very muddy, and I just slipped over. It was one of them things where I just fell over in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I fell over right in front of him. And I had time to get around onto my stomach and to try and crawl away, but he just got me on that side. He must have just grabbed me.
I'm going to show you how lucky Karla was. I'm going to throw this in and get a crocodile only half Solomon's weight to shake his head. He's just down there. There he is. Come on. Oh, he's got to do the roll first. Oh, look at that. Now the reason he's rolling is because I give him a few pulls. He's trying to break a piece off because he thinks He's a large animal. Look at that. You see that swirl when he shakes? I mean, it doesn't look that fast the way that he shakes his head, but my God, there's some power in there. Look at that. Now the rolling's only to break a piece off. He thinks it's too big to shake. He's got to go. No, he's got it. And that was a chook tied about 4 times through his body. Whew. That's just raw power there, people. Raw power. And remember, he's only half the size of Solomon. So you can see how lucky Karla really was. Okay, the day of the attack, Karla actually came past Solomon here, and he was out just about where he is now. She basically climbed up to the fence, but he didn't do that. Walked along here. While she was doing that, Joe was coming around the other side of Brian's pool there. It's going to be a bit hairy here because we've got a male and a female with a nest. She wandered up to here, near this tree, and she actually just jumped down.
And I said to everyone, look, here's the pussycat of crocodiles. If there's any crocodile, Solomon's the pussycat of crocodiles.
And she walked over here to Solomon and actually banged him in the tail with a bucket, try and make him turn around. Let's come on. And he came around. As he did that, she sort of slipped over on a bum.
But then he grabbed me on my left leg, on the upper thigh, and picked me up and carried me into the water.
And I started walking out of the shed and I could hear screams.
I was walking around to the door of the enclosure when I heard Karla cry out. I knew something was wrong, so I ran up and jumped up onto the fence, and I saw that Solomon had her by the left leg and was dragging her into the pond.
By that time, Peter Basso had heard the screams.
So all I could really see was Joe sitting in the pond, Karla in the water.
A tourist named Glenn, he jumped in off the fence, over the fence, and grabbed my arm, and then Peter Basso was there to grab my arm, and they pulled me out of the pond.
But that left Joe sitting on his head, holding his fingers in its eyes.
Then Peter Basso come up and he said, "Where is he?" I said, "Don't worry." He said, "I've got him." It's quite hilarious when you think about it. Then I decided, what do I do, you know?
And he thought, well, how am I going to get off? Well, he couldn't come this way because Karla was laying over here. He didn't want the croc to come out this way. So he had to get out of the water over there. And there's only a gap of maybe that much between the two pools.
And just as I got there, Joe jumped off the top of Solomon.
So he launched himself off the crocodile in between that grass and just crawled out. I'll just try and show you. Yeah. Through the grass here, he sort of came up this way. Come on.
So with that, Solomon's just moved straight up after Joe, straight up into the grass after him.
Come on. And he crawled out through the grass here. Cheated death, he did.
Karla was still screaming, I mean, considering what she'd been grabbed by, and her actual leg, when we pulled her out of the water, this leg was actually pointing sideways. So you could actually see that he'd torn her in down the centre.
This skull here is exactly the same size as Solomon's head. You can see why he did so much damage. Now the first bite got Karla across the leg here, just with the tip of the jaw. Now the pressure was so great, it not only broke the leg, it actually split the leg open. And the main abductor muscle just popped out of the leg. Now on the next bite, he got her a bit higher across the pelvis area here. And then he shook her a couple of times. Now, it not only broke the pelvis back and front, it also caused massive internal injuries. Luckily for Karla, Solomon had lost his teeth through fighting and bashing the concrete pool. Had he had teeth, I'd hate to think what would have happened. Now Solomon is about 29 years old now, and he can live for more than 100 years. So he's going to be around long after I'm gone. Now my father hatched him from an egg at Edward River, and he only passed away last year. So Solomon has chased my father around, he's chased me around, he's tried to eat my niece, he's going to chase my son, he's probably going to chase his son, my grandson, and most likely chase my grandson, or my great-grandson. I think that should make him happy.